Edward T Chang is professor of ethnic studies and director of the Young-Ok Kim Center for Korean American Studies at the University of California at Riverside. He was recognized as an expert on the Korean African American conflict in Los Angeles and featured in media in the US and other countries. He significantly contributed to making the Korean community's voice heard in the world. He is also a board member of the Council of Korean Americans, CKA, and advisor of the Overseas Koreans Foundation, OKF. Professor Edward T Chang tells us about the Korean community abroad. A professor of ethnic studies at the University of California at Riverside recorded nearly 120 years of Korean American history, which began with independence activist Dosan An-chang-ho. Professor Edward T Chang provides an accurate understanding of Korean American history in the hope of seeing the next generation gain a balanced historical view. I am pleased to welcome to the studio Professor Edward T Chang. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
I understand that this is your second visit to Korea this year.
Yes.
So could you maybe tell us the purpose of your visit? What are you
I
here for?
usually visit Korea to give several lectures, and I already gave about 7 lectures at 7 different universities on different topics.
Wow. And
Yes.
you're able to do all that, 7 lectures?
Well, I
and such?
enjoyed coming back to my mother country.
Yes, of course. And here you are in our studio. I would like to talk about how you are the first Korean to receive a PhD in ethnic studies in the US. So could you maybe begin by telling us about ethnic studies, what you study and what you teach in this academic field?
Ethnic studies as an academic discipline is relatively new. It began in 1984 at UC Berkeley. Began a PhD program in 1984. I was one of the 7 cohorts who was admitted, and I was the only Korean American. And I finished my doctoral dissertation in 1990, which I became the first ethnic studies PhD on Korean Americans. And the academic discipline in ethnic studies emerged because of a distortion of history written by mostly white Americans, for white Americans, and the contributions of racial minorities have been neglected. And many Latino, African American, Asian American students demanded that we want to learn our own history.
I see.
So ethnic studies try to understand American history from minority perspective.
I see. So what sparked your interest in ethnic
My, academic love affair is, of course, Korean American history, community, identity, and political empowerment. So I think that in order to gain visibility and political empowerment, I think it has to start from understanding, learning your history. Korean American history is the foundation of Korean American identity, which enable them to empower themselves politically.
Yes.
So that's been my latest, mission.
Your passion, your love.
Yes.
Now, I understand that as a graduate student, you wrote impressive papers, and I'm going to touch upon that. Your MA thesis was on the Gwangju Uprising, and your PhD dissertation was on the Korean African American conflict in Los Angeles. I think this was the conflict in 1992, I believe?
Yes.
Yes. So could you briefly explain to us the ideas that you discussed?
Well, I came to America in 1974. I was 18 years old. I spoke no English whatsoever.
No English.
And to learn English language, I decided to enlist in the U.S. Army. So I learned basically English language in the army, very curse, F words and all that. And while I'm serving army in Germany, I witnessed a lot of racial tensions among black and white soldiers. I really didn't understand, I didn't know what it meant. But after honorably discharged, I enrolled at UC Berkeley as a sociology major. Began to learn the historical background, and it made a lot of sense to me what the tensions that were I witnessed. And as a new immigrant, I gradually learned the importance of understanding our own community, Korean American, Korean immigrant community, and that's what drew me into Asian American studies and ethnic studies. And it was way before anyone talking about multiculturalism in Korea.
Of course, yes.
And my doctoral dissertation grew out of my field observation of a tension between Korean merchants and African American customers. And I finished my doctoral dissertation in 1990. That was 2 years before LA riots of 1992. So by the time a riot erupted, all the worldwide media came, including Korean media. And I was the only person that did any kind of academic research on that topic. So I did literally about 10 hours interview for almost 2 weeks.
Oh, that's amazing. Had you felt different about anything after the actual, the riot in LA?
Well, back then, nobody knew anything about Korean American. We were invisible. We were pushover. Nobody cared. But now, after almost 30 years later, Korean Americans are visible.
Yes.
We are very much part of LA city politics. And so we have changed it quite a bit with emergence of Korea as a major economic power, K-pop, K-drama, K-food, K-beauty.
K-everything.
Yeah, K-everything is sweeping the United States as well. So a lot of younger generation Korean Americans are very proud of their ethnic heritage, which is make a huge difference.
Recently, you published your book called Korean Americans, A Concise History. Now, this was in Korean and
English,
versions,
yeah.
English and Korean. So could you tell us about this?
Yeah, I purposely wrote this book, a very thin book, because nowadays, if it's a thick, nobody
People don't read it.
Yeah, nobody even want to touch it. So I wanted to younger generation to easily gain access and learn basic Korean American history 101. You have to have a basic foundation.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so if you really don't have that basic foundation, I believe they are on a shaky ground. You cannot build high-rise building on a sandy ground, right? Sure. So we need to stand on the firm ground, and I'm hoping this new book will serve as a firming our Korean American groundwork.
Yes, we do have your books in front of us, and
Right.
Korean Americans, A Concise History is this book over here.
Right,
If we could.
this book.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as you said, it's quite thin.
Right.
Yeah, it makes you reach out.
Right.
It's true, though. I mean, 101, as you explain the book to be, 101, and I always search for, the topic dummies, the dummies books, the dummy series, because it gives you, just the basic information, something you can kind of build from.
Sure.
So,
Yes.
I mean,
definitely.
but for you to actually put this book together, I'm sure that you had to do countless. I mean, you spent countless hours doing research, gathering information. So how long did it take you to actually complete this book, to put everything all together? Could you tell us
Right.
about
Actually,
that?
it's even more difficult to write book this thin
Right, I
because
would
you
think so.
have to really select key pieces, and that's a major task. It took me about 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years to write this thin book.
Wow.
Right.
And I'm sure there's so much more, so much more information, not just information, but powerful, words, powerful sentences, powerful messages that you deliver through that book.
Thank you.
You are the founding director of the YOK Center. YOK Center is Young-Ok Kim Center for Korean American Studies at UC Riverside. So among the many leaders of the Korean immigrant community introduced in your book, there is a name that does stand out, YOK, Young-Ok Kim,
Correct.
particularly. Of course, the center is named after this person. So could you tell us who Young-Ok Kim is?
Yes, I established the Young-Ok Kim Center for Korean American Studies at UCR in 2010. So it's been about 9 years ago. I chose Young-Ok Kim Center because I believe he is exemplary. He is not only a war hero, but also humanitarians, a person who fought for the rights of women, underprivileged population, orphan, adoptees, racial minorities. Throughout his life, he fought for the civil rights of underdog. So he's a very rare rare commodity where not only war heroes, but also humanitarian and younger generation could serve him as a role model. And that's the reason why I established the Young-Ok Kim Center. And it is the only major research center in the United States named after a Korean American person.
Yes, I heard, and that's amazing, really.
Yes, I'm very proud of that.
Yes. Could you then tell us about, the things that the YOK Center, what it's dedicated to, what it aims to do?
Well, we are a research center. Therefore, our first mission is to becoming the premier research institution in the United States, if not the world, right? So we've published about 7 books in the past 9 years with a very limited budget, so which is a very major accomplishment. But at the same time, we also want to educate younger generation in terms of understanding how to evolve in the multi-ethnic, multiracial community. And I'm also hoping to make contribution to multi-ethnic society here in Korea as well.
Now, one of the most significant figures that the center did research on was Dosan An-chang-ho.
Yes.
Yes. And you discovered traces of his life in the U.S., which was previously unknown to people in Korea. And I came across this article about your discovery of an old San Francisco Chronicle interview with An-chang-ho, and it made front page headlines. It was
Full
a media
page.
sensation. Yes, it was amazing. And you spoke about this on a radio show in Korea as well. And right after that, it was everywhere. So tell us about.
Yeah, it's an accidental discovery. It's been sitting there for 114 years. And nobody knew. And I was doing research on Pachapa camp and kind of typing in Dosan An-chang-ho and came across this San Francisco Chronicle interview of An-chang-ho and his wife. It was a full page, and it was a totally accidental discovery. And through this interview, we know why and how he arrived in the United States, what his intention were. And so it was the stepping stone for completion of this book.
Right. So I'd like to talk more about An-chang-ho. And you also gave a special lecture. You did mention that you are here to give lectures to students at universities here in Korea. And we were there watching you giving your lecture to university students on Dosan An-chang-ho. So we're going to take our viewers to that scene as well. Here's some footage of, of our guests' lectures. Let's take a look. A hectic schedule awaits Professor Edward T Chang in Korea. That's because many schools and institutions asked for his lectures. Just like any other occasion, many students and researchers gathered to attend his lectures.
I'm really grateful for opportunity to present my latest research and discuss with the Korean researchers and professors on Pachapa camp, the first Koreatown in the United States. And I'm hoping this is the beginning of partnership between myself, our Young-Ok Kim Center, and academic institutions in Korea.
A moment to look back on the Korean community in the U.S. from a historical perspective. People will recall the moment as a meaningful lecture.
So when was it that Dosan Anchangho left for the U.S. and when and why was it that he established Koreatown in the U.S.?
Well, Dosan Anchangho and his wife Lee they got married in 1902, and shortly after they decided to come to the United States. And they arrived in San Francisco on October 14, 1902. The intention was to study. He wanted to learn Western technologies and Western democracy, Western religion. However, the reality was that you have to make a living. And so it was very difficult for them to study. And San Francisco at the time, at the height of anti-Asian violence.
I see.
Therefore, being an Asian living in San Francisco was very difficult. That is the reason why Chinatown was established. It was a forced segregation.
Oh, I see.
And Anchangho decided to look for work and happened to be, of all places, in Riverside, where I reside right now. Riverside, it was one of the wealthiest cities at the time in the United States.
And how did he end up in Riverside?
Because there were a lot of employment opportunities, a lot of jobs, because of citrus, orange grove.
Orange farms. And
So
plantations.
they were looking for workers, they were looking for laborers. And Anchangho came down to Riverside, and there were plentiful of employment opportunities. And he decided to establish what is known as a Pachapa camp. And it turned out became the first, largest, and first Korean settlement in the United States.
Right.
And also, Anchangho established what is known as a Korean Labor Bureau. It's essentially employment agency. Because of employment agency, Korean laborers coming down, they can easily find work. And it made a lot of sense to live in one same place, known as a Pachapa camp.
I see. We're talking about Pachapa camp, and talking about all the information is in that book,
Correct.
Pachapa camp. Is it true that Anchangho was the first married couple, him and his wife, the very first Korean married couple to immigrate to the U.S.? It's something that
Well, that's what I hear. It needs to be checked, but most likely, because official Korean immigration to the United States began January 13, 1903.
I see.
Whereas Anchangho and his wife arrived on October 14, 1902. Therefore, it's highly likely they are the first married couple to arrive in the United States.
Okay. I think as I was doing a little bit of research, or as I was doing my homework on Dosan Anchangho, I found that one of his sons, maybe his oldest son, happened to be like the first Korean Hollywood star.
Yes, Philip Ahn.
Yes.
Philip Ahn became the first Asian American actor.
Yes.
And he's the first Asian American actor to receive star and the Walk of Fame in Hollywood Boulevard. And all this, my research project began with discovery of one small map established, published by the Sanborn Insurance Company in 1908. It shows the downtown Riverside. It says Korean settlement. So in 1908, Riverside, Korean settlement, where did it come from? I haven't seen any literature on that, so that's how my academic curiosity led to this research and eventually publication of a book.
Interesting. You think about what happened in history, and you're amazed by every little detail. So the first Koreatown in the U.S. is the Pachapa camp. Where does this name come from, Pachapa camp?
It's a Native American word. The whole area was known as a Pachapa. Used to have a Pachapa station as well, the train station. So it was a Native American origin, and we continue to use that. And at the time, it was known as a Pachapa camp or Dosan's Republic.
Dosan's Republic.
Right.
Yes. Because, it later developed into the Korean National Association, which served as a base for the Korean independence movement in the U.S. So how was the association run? Could you explain to us?
In 1905, An Chang-ho established 공립협회. The headquarters was established in San Francisco. The majority of the members were residing in Riverside. So they were financially supporting An Chang-ho's 공립협회. And later on, in 1909, the 공립협회 and 협성협회 in Hawaii merged and became Korean National Association. And the Korean National Association became the foundation of independence movement in the United States and critical element of kind of a semi-official government representing Koreans in America at the time.
It's also called the KNA, right?
Yes, KNA.
Did the KNA remain active, still active, even after Tosan An Chang-ho returned to Korea?
Yes, KNA was actively involved in the independence movement until liberation of Korea in 1945. Even after that, it continued activities until 1959. And at the time, they were mainly interested in unification of Korea. But after 1959, it kind of no longer actively involved.
Could you tell us about the Korean American community now? I mean, where do they stand as an ethnic group in American society?
Well, we are one of the most dynamic and visible ethnic Asian Americans, and we used to be one of the fastest growing. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
But in terms of visibility, in terms of emergence of Korea as a major superpower to be reckoned with, the influence of K-pop, K-music, K-drama. Therefore, Korean Americans became much more visible, and we are trying to strive toward major empowerment through political gains. So, we are still at infancy in terms of a political empowerment. We lost any kind of a visibility back in 1990s. At least now we are visible. Now we are trying to gain access. In order to gain access, you have to sit on the same table.
Yeah.
They are not going to invite you unless you are visible. So we are at that stage right now, and hopefully 10, 20 years from now, we'll be very empowered ethnic minority.
Yes. Now, when we look at Korea, Korea is definitely transforming into a multicultural society. And, from your perspective as an ethnic studies professor, I wonder if you could give us, share your thoughts perhaps. What do you think we could do? What do you think Korea can do or could do to possibly, make this transition or advance as a future multicultural society? Really make it there.
Yeah, I think as a nation, Korea needs to develop short-term as well as a long-term strategy of what it means to be living in a multi-racial, multi-ethnic society. Korea, after all, became one of the largest economy because of exporting products to the world, right? And we need to globalize our not only economic structure, but our mindset. And we need to understand what it means to be living in a multi-ethnic community. We need to, right now, the multiculturalism in Korea is more of an assimilationist paradigm, trying to assimilate those women who married Korean men to how to cook Korean kimchi, Korean dishes, Koreanization. That's not what multiculturalism is. Multiculturalism means embracing their ethnic and national identity, culture, and become part of a mosaic of a Korean culture, Korean identity. So we need to strategize how to devise long-term plan for multiculturalism in Korea as well.
I think it's always been, it's a Korean thing about, being about one. It's about this oneness. So perhaps it may take some time. It may be a gradual process. How long do you think it'll take for Korea to fully transform or advance into this?
It depends on the policymaker. I think if Korean society can transform quickly. That's the major asset of Korea too,
Yes.
right? So if our national leaders, press, media decide, and educational facility, education decide to take on seriously, I think we can change quickly as well.
Now, you have great hopes for the next generation of Korean Americans who are to write their own history. So if you could take this opportunity, we have viewers watching from around the world, so perhaps you have a message that you would like to share with them to deliver to them.
Living in multi-ethnic, multiracial society, you have to know who you are. Knowing your identity begins with understanding your own history. So I strongly suggest learning, reading, watching Korean American history, and be proud of your Korean American identity, and get involved, and empower yourself. I think that's the message I would like to give to the younger generation.
I'd like to thank you very much for your time today. Throughout this talk that we had, I felt that with all the work that you've done in the past and the work that you hope to do in the future, what you hope to accomplish, it feels as though you are truly connecting Koreans and Korean Americans in a very, very extremely meaningful way. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you very much.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
We hope that Professor Edward T Chang will continue to be a voice of the Korean American community and the next generation of Koreans. Thanks for watching. We hope to catch you again next time.